Marcie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here. I love this platform and I love that it's just an encouragement for women to just speak. It's exactly what you say it is.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and I think that there's so much out there right now, certainly in social media, where women are kind of sometimes a little bit encouraged to maybe be critical of each other. And that is like what we're doing is we are focusing on having awesome women like you share your stories and share, what drives you, what motivates you, all of that. So it's exciting to have you on because I love what you're doing. So let's talk about, so your blog is wonderful, right? It's you have a popular blog and an Instagram account that is called Black Coffee with White Friends.
Mhm.
It is genius. And it's, you just mentioned to me that you love marketing and PR. And as soon as you told me that, I was like, that's it. That's this woman has a talent, because that coming up with a name is not easy for whatever it is that you're naming. And I love it. I think it's a great name. It's so memorable. And it also, as you just said, it says what it is. What inspired you to start the blog and the Instagram account?
Um, Honestly, it was. It, I'll make the story kind of quick. I've told it a few times, but my daughter was at a private Christian school, and she was the only Black um, girl in our class.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just thinking, and I was the only Black mom in the entire school, so it
Mm-hmm.
was it was a shocking community for me, and it was weird for me because I did grow up in predominantly white spaces. That has been most of my story, but unlike my daughter, I had siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles. So I had more of a connection in Black community than my daughter ever did.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think much of it until um, the Hillary and Trump election.
Mm-hmm.
And no
Mm-hmm.
matter where you are politically, a lot came up about race at her school. A lot of things started popping off. And I remember thinking, I've had all these, literally, I'd gone to coffee with so many white friends. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
thing was that we did. We had a lot of coffee, but we never really talked about what was happening in the world.
Yeah.
Um, and I kept a lot of that sorrow, a lot of my concerns to myself, like
Mm-hmm.
Trayvon, Charlottesville. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like, and I didn't have anyone asking me about it, but I felt like, okay, I'm going to write these letters to my daughter because I went to school for writing, because I don't want her to wonder where my mind was or what I was thinking
Yeah.
when she becomes my age, because I do that with my mom. My mom grew up in Jim Crow South, and I have a lot of questions that I never thought to ask, but now she's
Mm-hmm.
gone. So I was kind of thinking, I'm going to answer the questions that I think she'll have
Yeah.
later in life. That when you're a teen, you just don't want to hear it from
Yeah.
your parents, right? And so that was part of it. And while I was writing, I thought, what the heck, I'm going to write some letters to my white friends just to tell them more about my experience, what I felt like I couldn't say often in person,
Yeah.
but that I could articulate a lot better in writing, which I am a processor, so that makes sense that I would need to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is how it all came together. As far as the rest of it, the marketing and the PR and the branding, I'm fortunate. I have a award-winning graphic designer as a husband, and
Mm-hmm.
his thing is typography and lettering, and my thing is telling people what to do. So it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Art direct him, and he could fight back and say, no, we're not going to do that, and we could come up, and we really wanted to create something beautiful because we were like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
tough conversation.
Yeah.
We wanted it to feel warm and welcoming. I needed that for my own personal self. I just needed something that I wanted to put out that felt beautiful, that was colorful, that felt soft, because that's how I buy most anything in life.
Yeah.
And that came from the whole aesthetics of PR, marketing,
Yeah.
hospitality.
Yeah.
I did wedding design. So I kind of took
Mm.
all of that background and put it to words, I think. As best
Yeah. Well, I love that. And I love that you were able to bring that experience you had from your days doing marketing PR to benefit what you've created. So can you talk a little bit about from your perspective, what is it like to be a Black woman in a predominantly white space? Can you talk a little bit about that?
it's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
It's changed. It's shifted a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The world is just so, like 5 years ago, I think my answer would have been very different. I think even 5 years ago, I would have maybe even said, I don't know, I don't really think about it that much. Honestly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think now it's not that I think about it so much, because you can't get a lot done if you're always considering, who's in the room.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm more mindful of it so that my voice is present. Like, I
Yeah.
think that that's the thing. I think in the past, I didn't think about it, so I didn't think my voice needed to be heard in
Mm-hmm.
situations where it absolutely needed to be heard. And I think this is universal for women of
Mm-hmm.
any color, that often we think, well, I'm in the room, but I don't need to say anything, or
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak on that.
Yep.
And I think now, with everything that's happened, being a Black woman in a predominantly white space, I'm not necessarily policing behavior. I'm being mindful of who's not in the room, who I represent, what's not being said, what
Yes.
has yet to be heard, questions that um, need to be asked so that I can better understand what's missing in the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's happened a lot. Even I'm in publishing now, like working as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a very white predominant
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
industry, and so oftentimes I'm that my agent says all the time, your voice has to be heard.
Yeah.
My agent is white, and she has said, I can speak, but I cannot speak to your experience, and you have to be willing to say what needs to be said, and I will
Yeah.
be well. And that's very different than how I would have felt. And now I look back on all those times that I was the only Black employee, I was the only Black student in a class, and all the times that I didn't use my voice in that way because I didn't know that it mattered. And when I say it mattered, not to the people in the room, but to my own embodiment of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you think has evolved just since the summer of 2020 to
Mm.
where how do you think things have evolved? Does do you feel like progress is being made? Do you feel like there is a one step forward, two steps back? Like I'm very interested in your opinion, because I think there's been a lot of discussion, but the question is it having an impact? And I'm curious if you can speak a little bit and you could share your opinion about how things may or may have not changed since the summer of 2020.
And I will preface this with I'm kind of like the Notting Hill speech. I'm just a Black girl sitting here with my one life to share.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one opinion. But I will say this: I think we're always progressing, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing that is hard to notice. Um, we're always, because that's just the work of evolution. As the
Mm-hmm.
universe expands, so are we as humanity. We're
Mm-hmm.
expanding,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that expansion makes a lot of people fearful. And I think the fear isn't so much of, like people say, it's a fearing of a brown America, or it's the fearing of, down with white supremacy. I think what it is it's a fearing of what that unknown will be like. I think because of that, because of this new awareness, I think the conversations that we're seeing a lot now are people who feel the awareness is the thing to attack. And if they can control awareness, then we'll stop evolving. But it doesn't really work like that. It's a lot like you can, and this is kind of just how I think. It's kind of like a parent who says, if I just don't acknowledge that my son, daughter, or even my non-binary kid is changing into a man or an adult, and I keep them boxed in and safe from the world, the world can't get in, and they'll never know, and they'll never grow. And it's just like that's ridiculous. They're going to, because there's just a natural inclination to want to grow and to discover. And I think that this country is kind of that team that's needing to grow. And the old guard is that parent that's saying, there's nothing good out there for you.
Yeah.
And we have all these rebels who are just like, rebelling in every way they can.
Right.
That suffocating kind of control. And I do think it's changing.
Yeah.
But it's minimal. And I don't know if it's I don't think it's linear. I think it's much more nuanced than that. It's much more nuanced. And I was thinking this morning, I was seeing on social media a lot of people were so upset that Democrats hadn't won as many seats as they hoped in these last elections this week. And I thought, that's where we're not growing. We still think it's a Democrat-Republican thing. We still think it's a right and a left and a that. And it's really not that.
Yeah.
I think we have to start thinking more about what is the character that we want for America to be? What is the collective identity? What integrity do we want?
Right.
And we can't always look at because the answer to what people found offensive with Trump isn't replacing him with a Biden and then and on Bidenism. So that's not the answer.
Yeah.
The solution is that we have to be much more willing to be gracious with each other's concerns, differences, ideas, beliefs, and rather than being so definitive that one, and I say it all the time, but people don't believe me. I'm like, I really don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. That's never going to be my thing when I'm posting this. My thing is, did you vote for someone who harms other human beings?
Right.
And are you supporting a policy that harms certain groups?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And if you go back in history, you'll see that all kinds of power have come from both sides of that equation, like Republican, right, left. You know, no one's exempt from that.
Yeah.
How do we become a more balanced state of the union? How do we become a more perfect union, basically?
Yeah. Well, Marcie, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that one of the things, without getting too deeply into any kind of politics, I think one of the things that emerged starting in 2016 over those few years is that we almost were told we need to choose, are you this political party? Are you that political party? And that's where you sort of had to stay there, no matter what happened, no matter what you agree with, whether there were individuals in that party you agreed with or didn't agree with, you sort of stayed there. And I love the nuance of what you're saying about it's not that for you. What it is, who are you as a human being, and who are you voting for? Are you voting for people who are going to harm, are going to have, are in favor of things that are harmful, or are you voting for people who are not in favor of those things? So I appreciate you bringing that. And if you think about what you have learned since you've started the blog, since you've started Instagram, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned as you've embarked on this?
Wow. I think for me, it's probably personal. The most surprising thing is just really how much I care. I've not always been this person. I remember when my husband and I got married, I was 40 at the time. That was like 12 years ago. And he had said, I would say things and he'd go, do you ever think you'll be like an activist? And I was like, not if it means I got to put down this cup of tea and put down my book and go, no. So I think for me, the most surprising thing is just how much it matters to me. And it's not so much that it matters because of politics. It just matters because of human beings. I really want to see people thrive. I want to see people feel secure in their choices. I want to see healthy political debate. I want for people to be able to hold each other tension. And I think the thing that's most surprised me are the times when I've gotten to experience that. When I've had like, I've posted something and someone got upset, or I've written a blog about something and someone got really upset, and they DM me and we've had a conversation about it. And it's rare. I can count on my hands the times that that's happened, where we actually have been able to have a conversation without them feeling diminished and me feeling like I needed to change. And those are the most surprising moments because it's out there, it's possible. And when I see it, it's like seeing like, a comet. It's so fleeting. It's like, oh, I just experienced, grace and humanity all wrapped into one, and there it goes. I think that's been the most surprising. And I think I'm really surprised at how many people have wanted to be part of what I'm doing. That's been really shocking. When I started it, I kind of made this vow. I'm a spiritual person, and I kind of made this vow to God that I was going to see what the universe gave to me if I opened myself to the universe. So I decided I wasn't going to do hashtags, and I was going to do very few acts. And to this day, I don't do hashtags in my posts, and I don't do a lot of acts unless I'm accrediting someone's work. But like if I talk about Oprah, I don't at Oprah, or just to see. And it blew my mind that even before George Floyd, the amount of people who wanted the same kind of space, and that's been remarkably encouraging to have people who are like, yeah, I do want to look at these things. I do want to look at gender and race and feminism and womanism, and I want to look at all these things. And inclusivity and intersectionality and all of it. But I don't want to feel, I have a friend who once told me, well, I don't want to say something stupid and be stupid forever online. And I think that's how people feel. They're like, I want to have these conversations, but I know if I say this thing, someone might videotape me or capture this one comment that I made, and that's me forever. And it's been great to have people be brave and vulnerable with me. That's been really surprising.
So you have a front row seat in terms of observing how people are reacting to your content. You're creating the content, you're talking with people. So for other people who don't have that front row seat every day, what is required in order to change your perspective, open your eyes? What do you think?
curiosity and courage.
Mm.
I think you have to have curiosity about humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to have the courage to understand that those of a differing opinion can't harm you truly.
Yeah.
You know, like, because they can't change your mind. So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
I'm always so surprised. I do a lot of biblical interpretation, and when you mess with the Bible, people are just like, "You cannot mess with the Bible. You can't mess with the Constitution. You can't mess
Mm.
with the history." And I love messing with all those things.
Right.
And it's funny. I had a woman. I've had many people, but I had this one specific woman said that my problem was my interpretation. And I said, well, that's an oxymoron because interpretation is personal. So
Right.
no one can have a wrong interpretation of how they're seeing something.
Yeah.
Now, if you're saying my wisdom or knowledge is flawed or my
Mm-hmm.
information is flawed,
Mm-hmm.
that's different. But you can't say that my interpretation is wrong because it doesn't line up with your own interpretation.
Right.
What you can say is that you disagree with it. And I'm
Yeah.
totally cool with that. You don't have to agree with everything I say. But that's the kind of courage. And I think the thing was the fear of that. If she's right, then how can I be wrong? And it's like, well, why does either of us have to be right? It's a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like we
Mm-hmm.
can go to God's dinner table and ask directly,
Yeah.
what does this mean?
Yeah.
And we forget that the people who wrote who wrote the Bible, were writing stories
Yeah.
to be interpreted. And I'm just like, we should give ourselves a lot more grace to give room for people to do that. And
Yeah.
I think we see a lot more humanity and a lot more God if we allowed for that.
Yeah.
But I think it just scares people. And
Yeah.
I think courage. And I think also people aren't that curious. They're very comfortable.
Right.
And I think comfort is the opposite of curiosity. I think
Mm-hmm.
comfort is like, nope, we go here for vacation, we eat this for dinner, we watch
Yeah.
this on TV. And curiosity, and I'd have to get there with the curiosity thing because I'm a generally frightful person and I'm skittish, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I started engaging, like there were just shows that I just wouldn't watch because I would look it up and I go, oh, there's too much cussing. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking out on whole narratives that I now love.
Yeah.
Well, like probably I would fight somebody over a TV remote if I couldn't like engage.
Right.
And so, but I had to get over that hump of I don't have to hold anyone to my standard of anything.
Right.
Because the truth of the matter is that person can turn it right back around and hold me to their standard.
Yeah.
But when I just say, okay, here's a story being told.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this story because let's take the TV show Pose because I'm not a queer or trans person
Right.
in 80s type of AIDS New York.
Right. Right.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Well, when you do that, you get Billy Porter. And how does one live without Billy Porter? So it's like it's like that kind of thing. And on the other hand, it's learning about other religions, like reading. I love this astrologist. I can't think of her name. I think the name of her book is You Are Magic, but she's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wondered about the stars and this, that, and the other. But then I was wondering, like, well, why won't I allow myself to listen to this interview that she's had, buy her book, see what she's saying? Because I believe in Enneagram, and someone could just look at Enneagram and all these other things just as much as they look at the stars to figure out why we do what we do as humans. Yeah. And my life has just been so much fuller just because I've allowed myself to be curious, knowing that I don't have to adopt anything that doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love what you're saying about, it's curiosity, as you said before, right? That is such an important element to have, but it's also an openness to understanding that your perspective and your experience is yours, and others have their own perspective and experience, and being able to see one another as human beings. I mean,
Right.
to me, that just seems to be the most important part in all of this. I mean, and maybe because social media, and I know we exist in a world that is so social media focused, right? You
Right.
have a blog,
Mhm.
you have Instagram.
Right.
We also function very much in that world. There's something about that medium that you can easily forget that the person on the other side is a person, that
Right.
there's humanity. And I think I think that's I hear that coming through in what you're saying. What do you hope that people take away from your content?
Well, that's a really good question. Sometimes it might just depend on the day. um, um, but I guess in general, is that if I could wave a magic wand, I would say that um, our humanity is much more connected than we like to believe.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
not just to one another, but to the stars and the earth and to the plants, to the air. And I just feel that what I would want someone to take away from spending time is that I can choose to think differently about something, and I can also choose not to be offended
mhm,
by someone who thinks differently than I.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Who are some of your creative inspirations?
I have a few, and people will be surprised on. Right now, I have to say, in this moment, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, the
Mm,
physicist. Um, I'm not like I never was a kid that was great at science, but I've been very inspired by his take on how to think. And my husband and I have been listening to his master class. So that's one person. I'm hugely inspired by Ray Bradbury,
mm,
who's long gone, who was a kind of, he taught me work ethic,
mhm.
um, what it meant to write daily. I always thought what it meant to write daily and to work daily was like this chore, this chug. But he's just like, no, I write daily because that's how I exist. And and that's how I exist, and that's
Mhm.
the freeing thing, and I pretty much absorb everything that he has to say. Um, a couple of women whom really affect me are not all that well known, but I love a theologist, a Black social activist theologist named Barbara A. Holmes.
Mhm.
Um, Her beauty, her grace, her wisdom, mind blowing.
Mhm.
And then my kid. That's like my husband, but truly my kid
Yeah.
because um, I just am excited about the world before them, and I want to participate in that, and I want to leave a legacy for that. So that
Yeah.
those are my drivers.
Yeah. In terms of what you hope, if you were looking into the future,
Hmm.
5, let's go a little bit longer, 10 years from now,
Yeah.
what do you hope that is we could see into that those 10 years down the road would be different in terms of how people are thinking um, on the topics that you cover? What do you hope is different?
I hope that there's right now, one of the things that most bugs me about my own progression and my own growth in this arena is a lot of it comes from Black pain. Like
Mhm.
a lot of the followers, a lot of the interest comes from someone died at the hands of the police, or
Yeah.
some tragedy happens,
Yeah.
and people are looking for a place to land or a place to process. And I'm happy to be a place to process in the land. That's fine. But what I hope is that there's more stories that have nothing to do with that.
Mhm.
I I see that happening now. Really loving things like Jingle Jangle and the Christmas movie that came out that was, pretty whimsical. I'm loving seeing things like today I just posted African American young man who's a skater and skates professionally,
Mm-hmm.
like skateboard skater and
Yeah.
inline skating. And then and someone pointed out, oh my gosh, you would love this figure skater. And so I looked up this figure skater, I posted something of his. I want to see more of that representation in places that we don't think to look for diversity. And I especially want to see it with women. I want to see women doing the craziest things and it not being like, she's the first one and there won't be another one for another 10 years. I want it to be so, and I want to see more representation for people who are outside of all the spectrum and gender and race categories, because we have a lot of people who are biracial, multiracial, a lot of people who are non-binary, or part of the gay and queer community. And I want to see people embracing these stories as their own. I recently watched Master of None's third season by Lena Waithe, the producer and writer, and it's this beautiful love story about two women, and I wept on that story like I was watching Pretty Woman. Like it was the same emotion. And so I'm hoping that we can find that there are love stories everywhere, there's adventure stories everywhere. And I'm here for it. And I will buy a ticket for an all-girl Ghostbusters. I will buy those tickets. So I want more of that. And even for my own work, I'm looking for ways to bring more of that to the table.
What is next for you?
Well, I have a book coming out in 2022 by the same
right around the corner.
Black Coffee with White Friends. I'm hesitant to talk about it because even though it's like a deal, I'm like, well, I haven't signed anything, like it's all of that. So, but I've been working on this book for a long time. So I'm excited for that. And I'm really excited with the new work that I'm doing with my Black Eyed Bible study and things that are happening with my Mockingbird history. I'm hoping more stories, more ways to connect with stories. I think I started out that way and then the platform built, and now I feel like I want to return to that more personal narrative. And I'm excited for that. What's next?
Well, I would look forward to seeing that. I would look forward to seeing all of those stories, the book, all of it. And hopefully we can have you back on when the book comes out, whenever, or you have new projects. Marcie, if people want to get in touch with you, what is the best, or not in touch, or follow you? We don't need you to give your phone number, but what's the best way for people to keep up with all of the wonderful things you're doing?
I think the best way is on Instagram at Black Coffee with White Friends. Anything that I'm doing, I'll probably put it there first. So if you go into that link on my bio page, it's pretty much anything that I'm doing is there, right there.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you spending this time with us, and thank you for all that you're doing and bringing these stories and bringing this voice. I think it's so important, and I learned just from this short conversation we had. So thank you for helping me.
Thank you for having me.